This is part 3 of chapter number 3, and again, I have repeated this time and again. Whatever doubts that you have, please write it down on a piece of paper, and whatever the assignments have been given to you for chapter number 1 and 2, please do them diligently, trying to find out answers. All the answers are given in the NCRT itself, so try to read them and try to frame answers, proper answers. See you in the in the previous part, we talked about the status of women in society. Apart from that, the role that was played by Gotra in the marriage system and the types of marriages, as has been mentioned by Dharma Shastras and Dharma Sutras. While we were discussing about the types of marriage, I had already given you that Brahmins wanted to keep this social structure intact. They did not want anybody from questioning their position, and that is why they had written or jotted down Dharma Shastras and Dharma Sutras, telling people that these texts have been actually been given by the gods themselves, and therefore nobody should question them. The Dharma Shastras and Dharma Sutras, apart from defining the status of women and how they should be married, apart from that, they have also given many other social rules for the society. So, in this part, we are going to read about the social differences, this subtopic, within and beyond the framework of caste. So, basically, we are going to read about the caste system and how it was laid out. So, the term caste in itself, I'm sure you know that it is basically various social categories, and they have been placed in a proper hierarchy, meaning that there are certain castes which are placed at the top, which are considered to be the most important and most purest categories, while at the bottommost are the categories which are not considered of pure blood or which are considered very lowly. So this entire system has been laid out by the Dharma Sutras and Dharma Shastras, which have been composed by Brahmins themselves. And again, the motive was the same, to keep the structure intact, to keep their own position strong in the society. And the Brahmins used to claim that these texts have been given by the god themselves, that is, they are divinely ordained, and therefore nobody should question this entire hierarchical system. Okay, so first most important point is that these Brahmins said that the positions that people were born to, so their positions are actually determined by birth. You should remember that I told you that there was one period of Rig Vedic period, and there was another following period which was called the later Vedic period. So until the Rig Vedic period, the structure was quite fair to all, because the hierarchical system was based on a person's work. Okay, if a person is doing good work, then they used to get respect in the society. Otherwise, so birth did not have any role to play in deciding what place a person will get in this hierarchy. But from the later Vedic period, people started getting the positions in the society based on birth. So anybody who was born to a lowly class family, they were not allowed or given the rights or opportunities to become great in their work and rise above this hierarchical system. So it during the later Vedic period, this entire system became very biased against the people who were born to the lowly class. So apart from that, the right occupation, the ideal occupation of the various varnas were already defined in these texts. That is, the four varnas, you must know that the four varnas according to these texts is, the first and the topmost is the Brahmans. Obviously they put themselves at the top. Second category, or the second step in the hierarchy, is that of Kshatriyas. The third were the Vaishyas, and the fourth were the Shudras. So Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, all four of them were given or allotted a particular occupation which they had to perform, and they had no right to perform any other occupation other than what have been already assigned to them according to their birth. So Brahmins were supposed to teach and study the Vedas. They used to perform various yajnas, that is sacrifices. So that was the work of the Brahmins allotted to them. And apart from that, they used to receive gifts from the various people. Kshatriyas' work was to engage in warfare. Obviously, Kshatriyas were the kings and the generals, the warriors, so they were to engage in warfare. Their another duty was to protect the people, to administer justice to the people. Apart from that, they also had the right to study the Vedas, to perform sacrifices. Like you must have heard about the Ashwamedh Yagya. Ashwamedh Yagya was a yajna which was done by the Kshatriyas to impose their authority in various areas. Apart from that, they also received gifts. The third category was that of Vaishyas. They were also given the right to study the Vedas. Apart from that, they could also do occupations like agriculture, trade, pastoralism. So, all these occupations were reserved for Vaishyas, which were considered the third category in the societal hierarchy. And the last and the most lowly category was that of Shudras, and their work was to serve the people in the higher Varnas, that is the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So the Brahmins had evolved. Obviously, there were challenges to this structure. You must have heard about the famous story of Karna, Karn, who was actually the brother of the Pandavas, the Arjun, etc., the five brothers. But Karna was already given up by the mother of Pandavas, and he was adopted by some lowly class family. So even though he was born in a Kshatriya family, but he was not given the opportunities and insulted time and again by the people because he was brought up by a lowly class family. So Brahmins, in order to stop the challenges coming to this structure, they adopted certain strategies. First such strategy, I've already told you that they popularized this idea that this entire system of four varnas have been given to them by the gods themselves, and therefore the gods must not be challenged. The second important strategy was they advised the kings to maintain this system. So the kings themselves, they had their own ulterior motives. Even they did not want to be challenged by the people from the lowly class, and therefore they had merged forces with the Brahmins to allow the kingdoms to be run on this hierarchical structure. The third strategy was to persuade the people that their status was determined by birth. So the Brahmins used to popularize this idea that based on your past, like in the whatever work you have done in the previous births, based on that you get a birth in the next, like the next birth. So people who were born in the lowly class, they were made to believe that probably they had done some wrongs in their past life. That is why they have received a birth in the lowly class. So therefore, people stopped challenging the structure in the fear that they might even get a worse life in the next birth. So apart from these strategies adopted by the Brahmins, they also use the stories like Mahabharata, etc., which again reinforced this entire belief of how the society was divided. Apart from this, now I have told you Rig Ved was uh, a set of various hymns, correct? So the entire Rig Ved is divided into 10 parts, and the 10th most part of Rig Ved is known by the name of Purusha Sukta. Sukt is a hymn and Purush means a man. So it is a hymn of a man. So according to this hymn, if we divide the entire body of a man, the head or the mouth part would be considered to be the Brahmins, because Brahmins give uh, the most important, they utter the most important words. Whatever they say is religious and have to be adopted by the people. The arms were considered Kshatriya because Kshatriyas are the warriors and arms work is to protect. The thighs were considered to be Vaishya because the Vaishyas used to do agriculture and all the heavy lifting. And last is, that is the feet part, was considered the Shudras because Shudras are considered to be mostly untouchables, and their work was to lift the burden of the entire body. And therefore, Kshatriyas were asked to serve the other three varnas, that is the upper three varnas. So this is how the Rig Ved has given a division of the society. Now, apart from that, the next subtopic is non-Kshatriya kings. Now, I have already told you that kings was reserved for the Kshatriyas. The king position was reserved for Kshatriyas, but there were certain exceptions. that we have seen in our society. Like for example, Mauryas. Now we know that Chandragupta Maurya, etc., these Ashok, these are the most popular kings that we have had in the past. Even Ashoka's period is considered to be the golden period of ancient India. But we do not know the correct origins of Mauryas. We have no such evidence suggesting that Mauryas were the Kshatriyas. Even the only the Buddhist texts have suggested that they were Kshatriyas, because you know that Ashoka in the later life he had adopted Buddhism as his religion after the ravage of Kalinga war. So in order to praise Ashok, Buddhists have given them a Kshatriya text, but this again cannot be blindly trusted. Apart from that, Brahmanical texts have given him a low origin, but again this cannot be trusted, because since he adopted Buddhism, the Brahmins must have felt betrayed, and therefore they must have written that Mauryas belong to a low origin, so we cannot trust that. But we can say that Mauryas, they were 100%, they were not Kshatriyas, because we have found many texts which suggest that Mauryas were not Kshatriyas. Next is the Shungas and Kanvas. Again, these were the dynasties which followed Mauryas, and they are considered to be Brahman. So this again is an exception, that these Kanvas and Shungas, they became the kings even when they were Brahmans, and their work was actually to do religious practices, but they also did the part of becoming the king and defending the country. Apart from that, there is Shakas, the tribes which had come from the Central Asia, and they again were not Kshatriyas, rather they were considered to be Malechas or barbarians by the Brahmins, and these Malechas, according to the Varna system, were considered to be untouchables. So this again is an exception, and one of the most famous king of Shakas is Rudraman, and Rudraman is also said to have rebuilt the Sudarshan lake, which also helped in the agricultural purposes of the area, that is Saurashtra. Then it is interesting that the best known ruler of Satvahan dynasty, again exception, Satvahan dynasty, Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni. Now he himself had adopted a title called Ek Brahma. Like kings used to take titles like Maharaja Dhiraj, etc. So Gautamiputra Satkarni had taken a title of Ek Brahman. So this means that again he was not a Kshatriya, rather he came from the Varna Brahman, and he also took the title of a destroyer of the pride of Kshatriya. The title is, it's not given in the book, the title was Sarva Kshatrangata, which means that he was the destroyer of the Kshatriyas. So this again is an exception which says that it is not just the Kshatriyas who used to become the kings, rather we have seen many such exceptions in the past. So the Varna system was moldable. It is not like it was only most strict and harsh for the lowly class, because they could not challenge it. The people who rose to power, there was no stopping them, and they even molded the Varna system according to their wills and whims and fancies. So apart from this, the Satvahans claimed to be Brahmins, whereas according to Brahmins, kings ought to have been the Kshatriyas. So we have already done this. Now the next sub-part is Jatis and social mobility. So Jatis is different from Varna. Now there are only four Varnas. We have already done that: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. But Jatis is a different kind of social category. All the Jatis can be subsumed in the Varnas, and Jatis are more in number as compared to Varnas. There is no restriction on the number of Jatis in the society. Plus, the Jati, just like Varna, they are also based on birth. So, the number of Varnas were fixed at four, but there was no restriction on the number of Jatis. Apart from that, the people who used to be encountered recently by the Brahman system, like Brahmins used to encounter many new tribal groups, etc. So they did not know how to involve them in the Varna system, therefore they were created to become a new sort of Jati, like for example Nishads in a forest. So they were considered to be a new kind of Jati. Apart from that, there were certain occupations which also became a new kind of jati, like the people who were following the occupation of being a goldsmith. So that became a new jati which was called Swarnakar. Okay, so all these new occupations later on became a new jati in themselves, and jatis which shared a common occupation and profession were sometimes also organized into a shreni or guild, and we have already done or talked about the guild system in class 11th. The task of this guild was to represent their own occupation in front of the kings and demand for various things. So all these jatis basically they came from a particular profession, and all the people belonging to that profession became the part of that particular jati. So there is a story also that is given here about the inscription of Mandsaur, which again talks about uh, the silk workers, and these silk workers they became their own jati, and they had a shared craft specialization. But then again, it is not necessary that people belonging to particular jati or performing some particular occupation cannot perform any other profession. We have had many such examples where people doing one such occupation can also simultaneously do some other profession, like take up some other profession. And even these people, the jatis, they used to use their wealth, pool their wealth in the construction of various temples, etc., in the hope that they will also get honor in the society. So that's it for